Hello everyone, hola a todos. Vamos a comenzar ya prontito. Les doy la bienvenida a nuestra sección de hoy. We're going to be starting pretty soon and I want to give you, welcome to our session today. Nuestra sesión está titulada Cuidado para las intercesoras, mente, cuerpo y espíritu, sostener, doblar, alejarse o correr. Our session today is titled One thing to care for advocates, mind, body, and soul, hold, walk away, or run. Y antes de comenzar, quisiera pedir a nuestros intérpretes que se unan a nosotros para dar unas instrucciones. Before we start, I would like to invite our interpreters to give us some accessibility instruction.
Thank you, Yvonne. Buenas tardes a todos. Felicitamos a los organizadores de este evento por su firme determinación de facilitar la comunicación bilingüe. Mi nombre es Mojde, mi cointérprete es Megan y representamos a la Cooperativa de Justicia del Lenguaje Tilde. Estaremos ofreciendo interpretación simultánea de inglés a español y de español al inglés. Good afternoon, everybody. We congratulate the organizers of this event for their firm commitment to facilitating bilingual communication in today's meeting. My name is Mojde, my co-interpreter is Megan, and we represent the Tilde Language Justice Cooperative. We will be providing English-Spanish and Spanish-English simultaneous interpretation. Si usted se unió a la reunión con su teléfono, por favor asegúrese de entrar con el app de Zoom para poder acceder a la función de interpretación. Esta función no está disponible en los Chromebook. If you joined on your phone, please join on your Zoom app so that you can access interpretation. Please note that this function is not available on Chromebook. Si usted quiere escuchar y participar en español, por favor seleccione su canal de idioma, haciendo clic abajo a la derecha de su pantalla de Zoom. En el globito si usa una computadora o en los tres puntitos si está conectada por teléfono. Seleccione interpretación, luego español y luego picarle en Done o listo. If you want to listen and participate in English and hear interpretation into English if anybody speaks in Spanish, make sure to select your language channel. Go to the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, click on the globe if you're using a computer or the three dots if you're connected by phone. Select interpretation, then English, and click Done at the end. Algunas pautas, a few guidelines. Yo estoy hablando rápido porque estoy dando la introducción en ambos idiomas, pero ustedes, por favor, no hablen muy rápido. Y si no están hablando, por favor, pongan su audio en silencio. We ask you, please, not to speak fast. And if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. Por último, les vamos a recordar que hablen una persona a la vez en un idioma por oración y solo hablen en el idioma del canal que escogieron. Si usted es bilingüe español-inglés, no necesita escoger un canal y puede hablar en cualquiera de esos dos idiomas. Lastly, we remind you to please speak one person at a time with one language per sentence and only speak in the language of the channel you chose. If you are bilingual Spanish-English, you do not need to choose a channel and you can speak in either of those two languages. Estos espacios se crean con el apoyo de todos. Por favor, comunique cualquier problema por la ventana de chat o habilitando su micrófono. Gracias. We create these spaces with everyone's support. So please communicate any issues by chat or turning on your volume. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you to our interpreters. My name is Yvonne Ortiz, and I am the Director of Training and Technical Assistance for the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, and I want to welcome you to our session today. The NRCDV, as we are better known, it's a technical assistance provider working to strengthen the capacity of programs responding to domestic violence victims and their families by promoting effective public policy, institutional response and research, and engagement in prevention. And you're seeing right now the NRCDV stands, and it's a commitment for us to stand along individuals and groups who have been targeted, degraded, threatened, or marginalized because they're Native Americans, people of color, immigrants, women, Muslims, LGBTQ, or people with disabilities. We stand against white supremacy, racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and all other forms of structural oppression. We stand with survivors of domestic and sexual violence, especially those most vulnerable and with limited access to services and protections. We stand together in celebration of the rich diversity of people in this country and the vitality and strength they bring to our communities and society. We stand with those who embrace self-care and community connections as a necessary and powerful source for social change. We stand with all other activists and organizations who continue to work passionately for gender, racial, and economic and social justice for all. And every now and then we try to read our NSVV stands because I want for you guys to know who we are, what we stand alongside, and to keep us accountable for the work that we try to do. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Joyce Kyles. Joyce is an award-winning international speaker, 2 times Amazon bestseller author, life and thriving skills coach, and consultant. She is the CEO of Joyce Kyles Consulting and the executive director and founder of Walking into a New Life. A graduate of Arkansas State University, she has received certifications from Cornell University in women's entrepreneurship, the University of South Florida in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, and the National Council for Mental Well-Being in Mental Health First Aid USA. She has also received certifications in domestic violence, sexual assault, and child sex abuse. Her humbling accolades and published work include features in Huffington Post, the Memphis Flyer, Tri-State Defender, Black Press USA, the New Orleans Tribune, the Welcome Green Book for Black Tourists, and being named the Crime Victim Advocate of the Year. Welcome, Joyce. We are so excited to have you here as our presenter today.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate the opportunity from all of you. I hope that I will say something that will resonate with all of you today. I am just humbled to be here and to be able to share a few insights that I have gained along the way. And so today's presentation is called Hold, Fold, Walk Away, or Run. Next slide, please. So that's a little bit about me, which is something that I put in all of my presentations, but you have already articulated all of that information. So thank you so much, Ms. Ortiz. The last thing that I will mention is the 2 at the bottom, that I have been newly appointed as the secretary for the International Confederation Tennessee Board of Directors. So I am really excited about that. And I am a proud wife, mother, and Mimi. I love being in those spaces, and they are relevant to the things that we will talk about today. Next slide, please. So this is what I plan to cover today. I want to talk a bit about mental health versus mental illness, when to hold, when to fold, when to walk away, and when to run. And then we'll talk a bit about being burned out versus being bummed out. And then lastly, we will discuss some resources. So before we go into the presentation, I would like for everyone to take a moment and simply close their eyes, open their hearts and their minds. I want you to envision yourself in the place or space that brings you joy, that brings you peace, that brings you calm. That could be a beach. It could be your back porch. It could be your garden. It may be with your grandchildren or your significant other, maybe in your bedroom, or for me, the ottoman in the sitting room where I like to binge watch on television. But just take a moment and find yourself in that space. And then I would like for each of you to breathe in on a 4 count and exhale on 4 counts. Breathing in 4 counts through your nose and out 4 counts through your mouth. Please do this at your own pace, and we will do this for just a moment longer. Please open your eyes. I hope that your minds and hearts are clear, that you have moved to your happy place, and that you will take this time for you. And I will talk about what that means in a few moments. So let's begin with mental health versus mental illness. Mental illness is also called mental health disorders. It refers to a wide range of mental health conditions, disorders that affect your mood, your thinking, and your behavior. So while there are many types that fit under the category of mental illness, we'd like to talk today about the 7 most common types. So often we hear about depression, we hear about anxiety, and that anxiety includes social disorders, panic attacks, and different types of phobias. We also hear about OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. We often hear about bipolar disorder. We often hear about PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, and also personality disorders. And that can be borderline, narcissistic, or antisocial. Now, any one of these in itself does not necessarily mean that you have a mental illness, but rather it may be mental health. And oftentimes these two get intertwined. I do want to say that a lot of times when we make references to individuals who love to clean and they love to have things organized, that we will say, oh, she's just OCD or he's just OCD. But I want to challenge you today to reconsider when you make those types of references, if you do, to consider that it may be actually not that they are just intentionally over-organized or over-cleaning, but it may actually have something to do with a mental illness, and they've just simply not been diagnosed. Also, the other point that I'd like to make on this slide is that when we talk about PTSD, we usually think about military. And I have learned over the years that PTSD can often refer to any type of trauma where an individual has been triggered, and it causes them to react in a way that is reflective of what they've heard or they've seen in their lives. So I want to bring these to your attention because for some of you, and likely even most of you, are familiar with these particular disorders. But again, I want to just emphasize the need to ensure that we are very careful in the language that we use when we are connecting with our colleagues, with our friends, with our family members, and certainly with the people for whom we serve. Next slide, please. So mental health, mental illness continued. So mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. It also helps to determine how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and whether or not we're making healthy choices. So it works a little bit differently than mental illness. If you would, please go to the next slide. So I want to spend a little time there. So poor mental health and mental illness are not the same thing. When I spoke at Harvard a few months ago, I spoke there and talked with a group of students who had formed a mental health, wellness organization. And I did notice that in the conversation, there was some bit of intertwining of mental health and mental illness and being intertwined as one and the same. So you can actually be a person who has poor mental health and not necessarily be diagnosed with a mental illness. So to know me and to know the types of presentations that I give, I tend to be rather transparent in the things that I share and I say. So for me, I want to be very clear that several years ago, probably about 12, I'd started really delving into what domestic violence is in all of its intersections. And I had been doing this work maybe a couple of years at this point. And I sat in on a session that talked about the different types of mental illness. And the facilitator spent quite a bit of time talking about PTSD. At that time, I had not considered that the feelings that I'd been experiencing as a survivor of domestic, sexual, and financial abuse were any way related to PTSD. But as I listened and then later sought treatment and talked with a doctor, I learned that I actually suffer from PTSD. And so I had always just considered that PTSD was only for people who had been in the military. But just because I'd been diagnosed with PTSD did not mean that I couldn't do this work, that I could not be effective. But what it did do for me is ensure that I started thinking about the things that I was interpreting, taking in, ingesting, and digesting, because those things mattered and they impacted how I interacted with people. It impacted my shyness. It impacted my confidence or lack thereof. But once I sought treatment and was able to talk through the things that triggered me, I understood how I could most effectively do the work that I do in this field. It gave me more confidence. It improved my mental health. It improved my mental wealth. And it allows me to be able to do the things that I enjoy. So likewise, a person diagnosed with a mental illness can experience periods of physical, mental, and social well-being. So I really wanted to lift that up and be honest with you all about my own experiences, because you may find that because you're dealing with anxiety or depression or some other form of mental health issues, it may simply be that you're just having a bad day or a bad week. It may be a series of things going on personally or professionally that may be causing you to feel this way. And it's not necessarily because you have a mental illness. By the same token, if you find yourself in this same space for long periods of time, where you're irritable, where you're moody, where you're frustrated, where you're just out of sorts, you don't feel quite like yourself, then I strongly encourage you to consider seeing a doctor and talking about those issues and having some tests done. There's no shame, and no stigma, or should not be a stigma, when it comes to mental illness and your health and well-being. I'm going to ask that something be put in the chat. It's a link, and it's for SAD. So some of you may be experiencing a sad period in your life. And sad is not necessarily sad and crying and disappointed as much as it is a conditional disease, a conditional illness that occurs at different times of the year. And it's actually a seasonal affective disorder, associative disorder. And so I'm asking that information, I do see that it's in the chat. So please do look up SAD, check it out, see if any of those symptoms actually apply to you. The unique and interesting thing about SAD is that it normally occurs at the fall, winter months, and it usually goes away around spring or summer. And with SAD, it's also usually associated with not having as much access to sunlight. So just keep in mind, vitamin D is important at this time of the year. And again, another transparent moment for me. I went to the doctor yesterday, and they did a series of blood work on me. And one of the things that came back was that my vitamin D is extremely low. So that told me that I need to increase my intake. It also acknowledges my craving for things like fish, because I could eat it every day, so it seems, but it is actually contributory to the fact that I need to change my eating habits from less cookies and ice cream and more to the point of fish and healthy leafy vegetables. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Next slide, please. So here is the part that I really want to delve into, that I am really looking forward to talking with you about. So if you are okay and you're comfortable with sharing, I'd like to talk a bit about fold, hold, walk away, or run. So I'd like to know in the chat, if you're comfortable and wish to share, how long have you been working in your current field? So has it been 6 months, 2 years, 10 years? Please just take a moment and share in the chat how long you've actually been working in your current field. Wow, 17 years, 6 years, 10 years. Wow, okay, a little over 2 years, 18. I'm seeing 5 years. Wow, this is great. Okay, long, 26 years. It is not long. It depends. 4, 60 years. Okay, law enforcement. Wow, 30 years, 7 years. Thank you so much for these responses. This is great. This is great because this is relevant to what we will talk about, 25 years. Okay, wow, great responses. And it's very eclectic. We have some who are just really getting into this field and some who are what I like to call seasoned. So having shared that, how many of you are considering retiring? For those of you who have been in for a while. For 10 months. Oh, welcome, Sarah. 10 months. Okay, so no one is considering retire. Sylvia says that she has considered retiring every day. Ms. Ortiz, retiring from the movement. Yes. Okay. Have any of you considered quitting? Okay. Start a new position. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes, when frustrated. Oh, Sylvia says never considered quitting. Miss Ortiz never considered. Okay, good mix. good mix. Okay, enjoyable as a service. Okay, wow, lots of good responses. Right. Never. All right. There's a question that's not here, but I'd like to ask, how many of you give presentations, conduct workshops? And if so, how often? Okay, so a couple of presentations annually. Ms. Mitchell says, I do several times a year. Okay. Asia says weekly, at least 4 times a year. Okay. Grace, at least 5 times. Okay. Ms. Clark times, at least 4 times a year. Okay. Andrea says workshops as often as possible. And Sylvia is all the time. Okay, wonderful. There is a reason that I am asking all of these questions. So lastly, have you ever left this field and came back? And if so, why? Okay. So Ms. Saxer says yes. Okay, Andrea says no. No. Okay, Sylvia says no. Zachary says no. Okay. I left due to relocation, found a different job. Ms. Saxer says I left due to relocation. She came back, missed it. Okay, Glennie says no, never. Yes, I was fired for doing racial equity work. Interesting. Okay. Ms. Christian says I volunteered for a crisis line a while back and left. A few years later, I got my current position as an advocate. Okay, awesome. I want to thank you all for participating and asking and answering these questions for me. Okay, and I do see that Shannon says I left for a higher paying job, but went back because it's what I'm good at. And I'm so glad that that came up at just this time, because I want to share a bit about myself and ask you the question and really have you think about whether you are bummed out or you're burned out with this work. So I have been in this field in terms of the professional perspective since 2009. I have been in this field as a victim turned survivor of abuse for more than 20 years. I have considered retiring. I've definitely considered quitting. I have not ever left this field. And my why is because I love what I do in it. But if you find that retiring is something that you think is only for an individual who's been in for 20 years, 25 years, I want to challenge you to consider that not being the case. See, sometimes retiring means that you may need to retire from working in this space in the way in which you do it. Sometimes considering quitting means that I may need to step back and then find a different thing to work on and come back to it later if you miss it. Some people will leave this field because they have been oppressed, because they have been abused, because they have been mistreated. And it makes you want to run away from the work. And that is disheartening and it's sad. And my heart hurts for people who consider quitting or actually do because they are not being treated fairly. In essence, though, it is the reason that we do this work, because we are looking to help the oppressed. We are striving to help those who have been victimized and mistreated and left out and left behind. So I've never left, but I have transitioned into other things. And I find ways to incorporate what I do so that the voice doesn't get lost, the message doesn't get lost, that the work is able to continue. Hold, fold, walk away, and run. And I may be dating myself, but there was an old country song called Hold, Fold, Walk Away, and Run that was sung by Kenny Rogers. So I don't know if any one of you know who Kenny Rogers is. You can certainly tell us in the chat if you are familiar who Kenny Rogers is. Oh, good. I have at least one. Yes, it's a whole song. So I encourage you to YouTube Kenny Rogers and look up that song. It's a very laid back, fun song, engaging, right from the Gambler. That's it. That's it. Thank you so much, Sylvia. So I encourage you, look it up. I always find it fun. The words are so meaningful and they're impactful. There's a lot of messages in that song. You know, country music is known for great storytelling, and that is definitely one of the best. So I want to challenge you to think about what you do in this field. I want you to think about what we talked about in the previous slides about mental health versus mental illness. And I want you to think about whether or not you are actually just tired and you need some time away, you need time to step away, or if you're finding yourself really just burned out. You have to know when to hold on. You have to know when to, you know what, I just need to step away for a little while and fold. And it's okay. It's okay if you want to just hold what you have for the time being and go to something else, whether the something else is another project, if there's a way to hand that work off to someone else, or to limit the time that you work on a particular thing. It's okay if you just want to fold up what you have, you know, take the kickball and go home, so to speak. And it's okay if you do. It's all right to walk away. It's all right to run away. Sometimes we have been in these spaces so long because we feel that no one can do it better than us. No one has done it as long as us. What will happen if I leave? Will the work continue? Sometimes we need to run because it impacts our ability to show up as our best selves, because we have stayed in places that have oppressed us. We have stayed in places that have harmed us. We have stayed in places that trigger us. So I want you to think about when to hold, when to fold, when to walk away from this work, and when to run from it. And know that whatever you decide to do in that space, know that it is okay. I used to tell my children when they were growing up that there are 6 billion people in the world. It's probably closer to 8. But I would tell them there are 6 billion people in the world. Get out and meet a few of them. I wanted them to explore. I wanted them to see what life had to offer them. I didn't want them to feel confined to a particular thing, a place, a person, an issue. I wanted them to self-discover. And if they chose to move back to the city that we lived in at the time, that it would be okay. But if they chose to stay and plant their flag where they were and grow there, it was okay too. But I want to strongly encourage you, if you get nothing else from what I say today, please check in with yourselves. Know when you need to step away from this. Know if you're experiencing a sad period in your life. You know, I saw in the chat, and I'm going to go back and intentionally look at what was just shared about someone having a family member who had been murdered. So if you will indulge me just a moment, I do see Michelle, thank you. I left after my brother-in-law murdered my sister and then killed himself. 4 generations of trauma, including what means it was taking a toll on my work. Now I'm ready to get back in the field. Currently working in DC. Michelle, thank you. Thank you so much, because you are lifting up the very point that I am hoping that everyone who is listening today grasps, that sometimes there are situations that show up in our lives that we simply just cannot be here to effectively take care of others because we have things that we need to process ourselves. I wanted to share that we have been caregivers. My husband and I have been caregivers for his father. He has been the caregiver for his parents since 2005. I met him early 2009 and immediately, as his friend, stepped in. There have been times when we have had to stop doing things that we wanted to do or needed to do. There were times when we had to fold and just realize this is as far as we can go. And that came for us about a year and a half ago when we had to place him in assisted living. I'm lifting that up because he transitioned, died, or passed away about 3 weeks ago, and we just buried him. There were times as a caregiver when we had to decide when to hold, when to fold, when we had to walk away at times when he was being treated, and as much as we loved him, we couldn't physically sit there and watch some of the treatments and some of the things that the doctors had to do. And sometimes we just had to run away from it all and come back. We had to step away, we had to debrief, we had to sit out on our own porch and take things in and reassess. At one point in time, his mom and his dad were both in rehabilitation centers. And so he would visit one and I would visit the other, and then we would switch. So we had to know and understand each other as friends before we became married couple, what that looked like, what it meant to reach out to someone, what it meant to ask for help, what it meant to step away for a while until we were ready to process and accept and present ourselves in a way that would be most helpful to him and to us. And so when he passed away, different people would ask us, what we needed. And honestly, we just needed people to bring us some food because neither of us felt like cooking. And I don't think people understood the stress, the strain, the process of planning funerals and trying to show up and be everywhere for everyone. And it is difficult, and still show up for work, still show up for family, still show up for friends, and still process how we have to grieve. Even as I am giving this presentation today, his brother passed away on Monday. So within a month's time, we've lost a dad and a brother, an uncle. And for the rest of them, that was their brothers and, uncles. And so I'm sharing this because life still has to go on. And in this work, your clients, your coworkers, your family, your friends may not understand when you say, hold on, I need a minute, I need a break. They may not understand when you just pack up and go and say, I have got to take care of myself for a little while. They don't understand when you tell them, I've got to step away, I've got to walk away. Sometimes they don't understand when you have to run away. But I am here to tell you it is okay. Give yourself permission to do it all, and do it all unapologetically. Do it quickly, do it firmly, and do it consistently. I'm going to ask to be moved to the next slide, please. So I want to take a moment in this space and thank you so much. I see the chats. Thank you so much for your comments, your condolences. And it is important to eat. So I'm going to lift that point up. Make sure you eat. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves. And not just in the event that you've had some traumatic experience to occur. Sometimes we think that we don't have time. I'm going to encourage you to make time. I'm going to encourage you to put yourself on the calendar. We all have these smartphones. I want you to look at your smartphone and do this as a tactic. And thank you so much for your comments. Oh, yes, and caregiving is definitely hard work. Oh, wow, 16 family members. I cannot even imagine. And so I will tell you that my heart and my thoughts and my prayers are with all of you who may be experiencing some sort of traumatic experience. And let's be clear as we move into this particular slide. We all have challenges. We all have traumas. We are all dealing with things that people don't always see. Again, I say to you, if you are in need of help and support, do not be afraid to speak up. Do not be afraid to hold what you got, to fold up, to take your blanket. I have a blue blanket that my husband calls my Linus blanket. It is my comfort. It is my peace. He knows when I get that blanket and I let out my recliner, that is my time for peace. And I love that about him and our relationship. So I want to share with you this particular slide. And it's a necessary but difficult thing to talk about. So I don't know how many of you may know Chesley Christ, but Chesley Christ was Miss USA 2019. She was born April 28th, 1991, and she died January 30th, 2022. So that was the first of this year. Chesley was a young lady that I had the opportunity to meet a couple of years ago. She was part of the Dress for Success's tour, if you will, talking about what it meant to be the current or reigning Miss USA and her love and fondness for Dress for Success and what it meant in her life. At that time, I was working with Dress for Success, and I had the opportunity to not only meet her, but share the stage with her as another speaker. So as you can imagine, I am just over the moon and excited and enthusiastic and honored and humbled. But before this picture and before we were all dressed up, she and I, along with some other members of Dress for Success, their professional women's group, we all met at a place called Cozy Corner. When she did her interviews, the first part of the morning, and I was sitting in on them, and everyone was, calling out to her and fawning over her and asking questions. And we asked, both myself and the executive director, well, what do you want to do before the gala tonight? And she says, I just want some barbecue. So, for me, that was a no-brainer about this is where we can go. It's a place that you will enjoy, and it's quaint and quiet somewhat, but the food is really good, and it allowed us to just be ourselves and have a good time. I lift those points up because as we were talking, she asked me about myself and the things that I was interested in and how I came into this work. And upon me sharing about my experiences with abuse and some of the problems that I've had, and even coming into Dress for Success in 2012 as someone who was in need of professional clothing. So we just had a really candid discussion. And I remember how gracious she was. I remember how in tune she was with the things that I was sharing. So much so that she hugged me and she leaned into me and told me how much she admired me. She told me how much strength she felt that I had. And that meant so much to me because I'm looking at this beautiful young lady who reminds me of our daughter. And I'm thinking, you're proud of me, but you are Miss USA. You are so in tune and smart and intelligent. She was an attorney. Um, she had abs to die for, you all. So you women who are here, um, I was so jealous. I just thought she was just a holistically beautiful young lady. And so we were taking different pictures, and she came behind me and another friend of mine, and I started to share that particular one, but I thought this was appropriate for a couple of reasons. So she liked to photobomb. So I have some personal pictures that I may share at some point, but they're close to my heart because that's who she was. She just wanted to laugh and have fun and just be Chesley. And people kept referring to her as Miss USA. And they were nervous and they didn't know what to say. And she said, I just wish people would just call me Chesley. I like being Miss USA, but I just want to be Chesley. At the time, I didn't think a lot of it, except that, yeah, you're famous, you're all over the place. Everyone loves you, they adore you. And then we had the event that evening, and we all sat at the table together. She, my husband, um, several of us. And she had been running around so much, taking pictures and doing the 360, the little spindle thing that you dance and take pictures and have fun on. And she was doing interviews. And she finally sat down and she's like, oh, I'm going to get to eat. But by the time she sat down and really got settled into her space, she was being called up to speak. When she finished speaking, she sat in her seat and she, oh, finally, I get to eat. And we left. Of course, I went up and I gave my speech. And She and I, along with my husband, sat and laughed and talked about all manner of everything but what was related to why we were there. And it was one of the best times that I'd ever had in those types of spaces. And my husband and I just laughed and talked about, it was like having one of our girls with us. So we grew a real love and fondness for her. I am sad to say that Chesley jumped 29 stories to her death in New York on January 30th of this year. And I have still tried to process, what did I miss? What did I not see? What did I not hear? And I realized that we are all really good at masking and hiding what is truly going on with us. It never occurred to me that all the pressures that she may have been feeling as a result of not just Miss USA, but in life in general, may have been too much for her. It never occurred to me until I watched the table talk that she had done. And I did share the link, and I'm going to ask Kim to please put that link in. I encourage you all to watch it because her mom and her dad talked a lot about some of the things that she said without saying. She talked about the fact that this was not her first attempt. And I always say that she chose a way that she felt would be certain and permanent. And I miss my little friend. I am so glad that I had the opportunity to see her, to talk with her, to get to know her. But it's also a reminder and a check-in for me to check in with myself. And so I made this particular slide to please call the National Suicide Hotline if you or someone you know may be having those feelings and those depression and anxiety, that you're feeling a bit off. I'm going to ask you to not dismiss it, but to check in with those feelings. Just as we hear our stomachs or feel our stomachs growling and rumbling, and we know, oh, that must mean it's time to eat. We also have to do a check-in with our minds and make sure that our physical and our mental and our emotional states are all intertwined. Because if the mind is not strong, if the mind is not processing, if the mind is leading us in a space that is unhealthy and uncomfortable, it will lead us to engaging and indulging in things that we may not have ever even considered. So if you are working for an employer, I strongly suggest that you check in with their EAP program. If you are self-employed and you don't necessarily have an EAP program, please seek a therapist, a counselor, or a reputable clinician. And I'm going to emphasize reputable because not everyone who is in this field has the best reputation. Not everyone who has the doctorate does not follow in practice in a way that may be healthy and helpful to your specific needs. So if you need to see someone, do your due diligence, ask for references, check websites, check their references. We can't just decide that because we've gone to one person, that means that if it didn't work out, then to give up on it. Sometimes you have to see 2 or 3 people until you find the one who is the right fit for you. But again, I say to you, please make sure that you check in with your mental health and make certain that it's not mental illness that is playing a part in your overall health and well-being. Next slide, please. All right, so I've got a couple of other slides as we wrap this thing up, but I do want to check in with the chat just to make sure that I'm not missing anything, any questions. See, Ms. Russell says, yes, their discussion touches every heartstring. You walk away wanting to become more aware so we can read the signals and understand how to help. Absolutely. Oh, yes. Ms. Toblin talks about the family members that she's lost and that this work has been very taxing, and family doesn't seem to understand when I say no. They don't understand the boundaries and it's hard. Absolutely. There is um, a presentation that I give that's called No is a Complete Sentence. It is hard to say no, but it is necessary. When you say no to other people, you are saying yes to yourself. You are saying, yes, I need a break. Yes, I can come back to you later. Yes, there are resources that might be able to help you, but I am not the resource for you in this space. What happens is when you continuously say yes to people, when you really want to say no, it gives a false sense of security for those individuals and for you as well. Because what it does is it tells those individuals that I can lean on him or her whenever, however, with no regard to whether or not I have done a real check-in with how they are feeling. I often tell people to please make sure that when you decide you need to talk to someone, check in with them first and ask them, is this a good time for you? I have something going on. Do you have the capacity to hear me out? And if you don't, be honest with me and tell me so that I don't burden you unintentionally with what's going on with me. And the closer, I will say this, the closer people are to you, the harder no is to say. But in some cases, no is a matter of your physical life or death, mental life or death. You have to treat it as such. So I'm going to share this book with you all. And it was actually suggested to me by Casey and Arlene, who are with NRC DV. It's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace, a guide to reclaiming yourself. And it's by Nidra Glover Tawib or Tawab. That's Tawwab. And Kim, I'm going to ask you if you can please find the link for that book. It is on Amazon. And again, it's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace, a guide to reclaiming yourself. And it actually also has a workbook, and it's new for me. Okay. I don't want anyone to leave from here thinking that I, for some reason, I've had this and the covers are tearing. No, I just got this book because even though I know and I understand, as we all do, about the importance of boundaries, we still need to find resources that will help us to best articulate the need to say no. So Crystal, thank you so much for sharing your comments. I do see them here. Yes, the moment is critical in our lives and we must seek help and not think others need, and not think that others need help as well, because they do. This last couple of years have definitely been difficult. And as I see that Crystal has shared that she's had to learn the hard way, not helping myself first is not going to help anyone. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do see someone mentioned about having an aging parent. I am trying to scroll up to that because I want to make sure that I am honoring everyone's time. Oh, thank you so much about sharing. I see that Miss Adams Children's did share also PTSD response to the murder of my only child due to intimate partner violence. That's how I moved full time into this work. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, Again, my heart goes out to you. I cannot imagine what it must feel like to lose a child, but I can certainly have empathy for you and appreciate your why. And Shannon talks about it building resentment when, yes, absolutely. When you are saying yes to people, you are saying no to you. And it will build a resentment over time if you're not careful. So I do know that a good friend of mine and fellow colleague in this work, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing, that she took a sabbatical for a year, and I honor her for making the decision to do that, because now I see her coming back into the work stronger and happier and healthier than ever. Now, I don't have a year because I don't have that type of team. But if you do, if you can only step away for 6 hours, do that. 6 months, 3 months, a month, a week. Again, as I mentioned earlier, put yourself on the calendar. When I joined Mary Kay for the whole I don't know, maybe 3 months that I was there, I realized that I'm not a salesperson and I don't wear much makeup. So it just didn't work. But one of the best tools that I learned was someone sharing with me to write down. And at this time, you can actually use your calendars and color code. But for the sake of this, I'll share it this way. He said, write down all the things that you do. Choose a different color for each thing. So if it's money related, write it in green. If it's organizationally related, and for me, because I do domestic violence primarily, then put it in purple. If it's something that's related to your health and wellness, make it green. And so different colors for different things. And she says, now step away from it and take a look at it for the month. If you see one color more than any others, then that tends to be what you spend the most time on. And when I did that, I realized that I was spending a lot of time with the organization. I was spending a lot of time, getting certifications in mental health, domestic violence, sexual assault. I was putting on a lot of events, but I wasn't doing a whole lot for money, and I wasn't doing a whole lot to take care of myself. So we can love this work, we can love this field, but we might also need to consider, is it holistically taking care of my needs? And if it's not, then what things can you change so that there is a healthy balance? So before the pandemic hit, I was actually working with the military in Germany for a few months. And I loved the work that I was doing, and it was completely unrelated to domestic and sexual violence. So I want you to really think about what things you would like to do, what things you want to do, what things you need to do. I loved working with the coalitions. I loved working with the military. I love what I do in domestic and sexual violence. But I also love talking about gamification and mobile learning for students. I also love talking about things related to women's empowerment and entrepreneurship. I love being a coach and a consultant. Those things bring me so much joy. And most of those things have nothing to do with domestic and sexual violence. But that is how I initially came into this work. So what I want to share with you all is to consider stepping away for a little while. And I don't mean necessarily stepping all the way away from the work. Sometimes we have stayed at our computers too long. We just need to get up and walk around. So take a walk, meditate, say no, say yes, ask for trusted help, and commit to your capacity. And when I say trusted help in your capacity, I mean just that. People, places, and things that you trust. People, places, and things that respect your capacity. And for those that don't understand your capacity, understand that you cannot save the world. Understand that you can only do as much as you are allowed to do. You know, I told you all earlier, there's probably close to 8 billion people. There's no way you're going to be able to save and serve everyone. Commit to the ones that you can and do that in a capacity that works best for you. This time last year, I was actually speaking at the FBI. And I also spoke to the entire FBI for one day, but I spoke specifically with those who work in mental health a different day. And we talked a lot about the capacity to be able to do what we need to do and take care of yourselves. And you have to be someone who can be trusted to help, and you have to reach out to people that you can trust. But if you are not fully committed to taking care of yourself, then you will be doing yourself and those whom you serve a disservice. And you may fall down and break down and do something unintentionally. And by that becoming untrustworthy and no intention of your own. We all come into this work with big hearts. We all come into this work expecting to be able to make a difference. We don't do this work because we're making 6, 7, 8 figures. We do it because we care. We do it because we want to make a difference. But if you are not taking care of yourself, you certainly cannot take care of anyone else. And I put take a shower or a bath here because that is important. You know, people don't always appreciate what it means to be at one with water. Water, I have on my desk that I am looking at directly across from me, a waterfall. And next to it, I have stress candles. And sometimes when I am working, I have turned on that waterfalls and I will light candles. And that will allow me an opportunity to just de-stress. Now, the key to that is to make sure you know when to turn it off, because I have gotten so relaxed doing that I actually started to fall asleep. So you have to make sure that whatever you're doing and participating in doesn't put you to sleep so that you could continue doing the work that you're doing. So I would suggest changing careers, even if it means coming back to it later. It's okay to retire. It's okay to find a hobby. There's other ways that you can show up in this field without direct services, doing direct services. And it took me a long time to realize that. You can consider being a mentor versus being hands-on. It doesn't negate your value. It doesn't negate your worth. It doesn't negate your ability to do what needs to be done. It is exploring other ideas and opportunities. So I want to take a moment just because we're getting to that end of the session and I'm about to wrap this up. But I do want to ask if there are others who have some suggestions or ideas or things that they are doing that may be helpful for their mental health, or if you happen to be someone who has been diagnosed with a mental illness, such as myself, what things are you doing that helps with that so that you can show up for yourself and for your clients? Wonderful. Yes. Ms. Mitchell, thank you so much for sharing the Shine app. That is actually one of the ones that I did plan to bring up as a meditation resource. Absolutely. You all please check out the Shine app. Okay, and she also shares that also Insight Timer has amazing meditation videos. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that you all are taking these points in, that you will use them practically in your application of work, professionally and personally. And I have been told several times that I will say professionally and personally and integrate them. And I'm okay with that because I do think that the personal and the professional do balance each other. If I'm too professionally involved in it, then where's the personal and the personableness of it all for me and those that I serve? But if I'm too personal and I'm too relaxed in the personal space, then I have had people who feel because I have been so personal, then the professionalism sometimes gets lost. So there's a healthy balance that needs to be had. And I love riding my bicycle when I feel stressed. Well, bless you, Miss Ortiz, because I am afraid to get on a bike. That I don't do, but I do actually like to run. Okay, and I did see Crystal shared that she created a sabbatical basket during her year off. And it contains everything positive, encouraging, and motivating to her life. I think that that is awesome. Everything from books, music, coloring items, her Bible, etc. Thank you for sharing that. All of those things matter. All of those things, they're tangibles. One of the things for our organization that we talk about is our mission to provide community education, awareness, and tangible resources for individuals who have been impacted by domestic violence. And we emphasize tangible resources because we all need things that we can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. They help with our mental and physical capacity to be able to not only survive this work, but also to thrive in it. So please, next slide. Oh, what's your one thing? So you all know that this theme has been all month long for NRCDV about your one thing. So I want to leave you with this. I want to challenge you. What's going to be your one thing for your self-care? What's going to be your one thing that's going to help you to process when things are not going so well, when you're having a bad day, when you're having a bad week? You may have a series where it's a season of things that just don't seem to be going well. So how do you cope? How do you manage? How do you maintain? How do you thrive? So for me, I shared some clips of myself. I like to color. I like to read. I like to write. But I have an alter ego. I cannot sing. And for those of you who are, churchgoers, what have you, or religious, I used to grow up saying that I could talk about God all the time. No one wants to hear me, not even in the shower. So I don't sing, but I lip sync a lot. So the first picture is of me, again, speaking the little black dress event. And I was asked to dance to the stage. And one of my favorite songs is Baby, I'm a Star by Prince. And that song, it represents me. It represents who I am. It represents my overcoming. It represents my resilience. It represents me thriving. And so not only did I lip sync the words, but I danced to them too. So that's something else that you all can look up. I want all of you to look up Prince's I'm a Star, because I might not be who and what you think or expect it, but for me, I am the star. I am the star of the show. I am the star of my life. And so I exemplify that in all that I do as much as possible. So I didn't just walk to the stage, I danced. And that was actually at the request of the MC, because she knows me and know that I don't believe in being sad or gloomy or down or depressed. We have those days. We all do. We all go through things. But I don't get dressed up and show up to be sad. I get dressed up and show up to show up. And so we had a great time that night, and it lifted the spirits of those who were there, while also simultaneously lifting my own. Because as I mentioned early, I had gone to Dress for Success as someone who needed clothing and needed support in 2012. And here I was now speaking, not as a testimonial, but also as a credentialed speaker and a survivor, and remarried and doing work internationally. And that was a lot for me to celebrate. The middle picture is me representing myself as Tina Turner, because she is my favorite person. And one of the things that I had to remind myself and remember in terms of triggers is the importance of seeking counseling and therapy for my own experiences, and not being ashamed to go and get mental help. When What's Love Got to Do with It came out, and Angela Bassett is one of my favorite actresses, there is a scene, if you have seen that movie, where Angela has been beaten and she, for the last time, and she runs from one hotel to the other across the street. And the first time that I saw that, I had to get up and walk away. And I just burst into tears. And I didn't understand what had happened to me. It was a trigger for me. I thought I could watch that movie and be okay. And I was, with everything that I saw up until that point, because that was my experience when I was transitioning out of abuse. And one of the worst experiences, beatings, rape, that I experienced was the last for me too. And I jumped out of a window and ran to my grandmother's house, who didn't live too far from the house where I was living. But to see that show up on screen was extremely triggering for me. And so I remembered thinking, yeah, I've got to talk to someone because I need help. I have not processed this. So when I talk to you all about preserving your mental health and well-being, it's because I have been there, and I understand PTSD. I understand what it means to be depressed, and I understand what it means to be at a point of suicide, because that was the night that I decided that I was going to kill myself. But it was also the night that I decided that I wanted to live. So yes, I will dress up, and yes, I will dance, and yes, I will thrive, and I will always encourage other people to do the same. This life is to be lived. It is to be enjoyed. It is to be celebrated. And it is for us to help as many people as we can within our boundaries, within our limitations, and not lose who we are. So my last picture as I close this out is of me and Shaka Khan. So I tried to dress up as close as I possibly could to her. And a friend of mine, her way of release is hosting these events where individuals dress up as their favorite characters and they lip sync. So mine was Shaka Khan, and I did my best interpretation to dress and look like her. But again, I'm not a singer, so thank goodness for lip syncing. So that is what I have. Please go to the next slide. I do believe that's going to close us out and open the floor for any last thoughts. So I do want to thank everyone connected with NRCDV, all of the attendees, the interpreters, everyone who was in attendance today. Thank you for the opportunity to share with all of you. Thank you for the opportunity to share this space with you. It has been my personal and professional honor to do so. I bring you greetings from Memphis, Tennessee, by way of walking into a new life, Joyce Kyles Consulting, and I ask for safe wishes and best travels for me as I get ready to do what I enjoy to do in Egypt on Monday, where I will spend the week talking about gamification and mobile learning for students while still being my authentic self to bring in the elements of where I have come from in domestic and sexual and financial abuse. Thank you so much for your time. And at this time, I will turn it back over to NRCDV. Thank you. And I will check the chat for any questions. The floor is now you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joyce. This has been so powerful. And we want to thank you for being, for your openness. I know that many of us listening to you were able to connect and learn so much from you. Let's see if we have any questions, any comments we want to uplift. Kim, do you see anything?
No questions coming in just yet. Lots of gratitude and appreciation for you, Joyce.
Thank you. Oh, at the elementary, I saw someone lift that up. Yes, it is too funny. I plan to include that when I speak in Egypt about teachers and education. Yes, lots of fun.
Any resources that you want to share, feel free to share them on the chat. I think it's been wonderful. And this is only our second session of our series. So we have the last and third one next week. And all of the sessions have been really powerful. We have learned so much. And Joyce, today was just priceless. Thank you so much. Let's wait just a little second to see if anybody else shares anything.
Thank you. And I see Joanne sent her Gmail address. I'm going to just put my email address in here for anyone who may want to connect with me about anything at all. Would love to be able to hear from you all. I am not in DC. I travel to DC, so I travel, as you see, anywhere and everywhere. But that question might have been more directed to NRCDV. But Michelle, I am not. I am actually in Atlanta, but I travel everywhere. So.
Thank you, Joyce. Well, while we get any questions or messages, we wanted to share with you. Like I mentioned, we have one more session next week, and we're going to be featuring Carol Kennedy. It's going to be another amazing conversation, talking about, taking care of ourselves as advocates, taking care of our mind, our body, and soul. So I look forward to that one as well. And another event that we are very, very excited about is the Transforming the Gender-Based Violence Movement, Increasing BIPOC Representation and Actualizing Accountability Project launch. And this is a project that's really close and near to our hearts. And we would love for you guys to join us. And thank you, Kim. Kim is putting the registration link. That's October 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And an opportunity for us, for you guys to learn about what this project is about and how we're going to be supporting people of color. And we have many events this month for DVAM. We are hosting an NRCV Safe Housing Capacity Center Policy and Research Briefing, and this will take place October 26th from 2 to 4:30 Eastern Time. All of our events are free. So please register and join us. And I believe this is our last one, and it's the fun one. And this could be a way of us taking care of ourselves and, joining in dance and singing. We're going to be hosting a free virtual dance party for all of you, everybody. Invite your friends, families, other advocates. Just join us on October 28th as we close Domestic Violence Awareness Month, just for an hour of laughter, dancing, whatever you want to do, just watching people. It's going to be from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. And you'll see that the registration link is as well on the chat. So those are the events that we have left for the month. And I want to invite everybody to follow us on social media. You can see our handles. And I know that Joyce posted hers too. Like us on Facebook, follow us. That way you'll learn about all of the amazing work that NRCV is doing and about our amazing contractors and presenters as Joyce. And please answer the survey. Let us know how we're doing. We have questions about topics and new trainings that you would like for us to present on. If yourself, you have something to share, we're always looking for new presenters. Let us know via the survey. And that's about it. Nothing else, no questions. Everybody's good and ready to take care of one another and themselves. We're ready? All righty. Ah, there we go. Thank you, Aisha. Hopefully we'll be seeing you next week at the same time. Well, again, Joyce, thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate you so much. This has been wonderful. And please take care of yourself in Egypt, in your travels, and come back and show us pictures.
Yes, I absolutely plan to do. I am beyond excited, over the moon, honored, humbled, all the things. I am so looking forward to the opportunity to be able to share in that space. So yes, lots of pictures. If you follow me on social media, you will see them. If you email me, you will see them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joyce. And thank you to our interpreters. You've been doing great. Thanks for making our space multilingual. And thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon. We'll see you next week.